Eric Lagerstrom, this is your third appearance on Second Nature. You jumped in and helped out on their second appearance. Actually, we were breaking into this like athlete retail conversation, which I thought was a really fun
Oh
one.
yeah, Jamie
But this,
O'Brien.
which I mean, athletes figuring out new best practices is probably my favorite thing to talk about because there's a lot of stuff that you can kind of cross pollinate, take these examples from what other sports are doing. But for someone to do something that's totally new and develop it out into a new way, I think is really special. And I think that in a lot of ways, what you've put together here with the film that you just put out is another one of those things of, hey, I'm gonna make my own film. And maybe we've seen certain stuff like this in snowboarding or something like that. But I think that what you put together with look for things where you can find them, it really kind of stands out. And I want to just spend this entire episode digging into the process, the mindset, the setup behind the whole thing, the execution, and the response. And actually, maybe that's a really good place to start is the actual response from the people that were the most invested in it. So to back up a little bit, you've been making content for a very, very long time, and I think we can go into that too. You've been making content for a long time. You've been doing a lot of episodic or kind of, vlog style storytelling type content, but you have always wanted to do like a proper film, which is what you did accomplish with the release of this film. But to be able to do something like that, it took all this extra time, extra resources, and extra support to get this thing to exist. That in triathlon specifically and in endurance sports, I think is not very common or is completely non existent. So I guess where I want to start is you had this vision, you got sponsors on board, you executed on the vision. What is a conversation with a sponsor or a supporter after the release of all this look like?
Yeah, it was. You're completely right. This is not really like anything else that's ever been done in endurance sports, at least to my knowledge, and certainly not in the triathlon space. Which is also kind of um, a parallel path to my actual start in YouTube. There was no triathlon related to YouTube. I don't even know if there were hardly any runners or cyclists or anybody doing YouTube back in 2014. Maybe yeah, 2013, 2014. But I felt like this is the kind of thing that I want to see on the internet, and maybe like if I get the ball rolling on it, or at the very least, I'm just going to make something that I wish was out there in the world. And I think that is like probably the best place to start from with any piece of art or a film or music. Like make the thing that you want to see in the world. Um, Trying to describe the idea for the film itself to anybody, let alone sponsors, was pretty tricky because I don't think this spoils it, but if you've seen it, it is not so much, it's not a film about, it doesn't have an objective of like, we're going to go do X course or terrain, which is what most endurance content, if there's anything long form these days, are. It's around a race or around a specific route like the Pacific Crest Trail. And there's a very obvious story arc of here's who I am, here's what I'm trying to do, did I accomplish it, resolution. And this film, I really wanted to almost like pose a question more so than anything of what would it be like if like as an endurance athlete it was okay for you to not be training for any specific race. Maybe you're training just to run up and down a certain mountain better than you did last time, or just go find out if you can. And maybe you're just training so that you can go ride somewhere really beautiful on your bike, and it's like you want to be in shape to be able to do that to the best of your abilities. And it feels really good to be moving through nature efficiently on your own steam. And the question kind of proposed in the beginning of the film is that enough? Or, does triathlon specifically, but endurance sports in general, constrained by you must be getting ready for a race and training for that race, and that's the only way you can have a conversation with anybody else in the sport.
Yeah, what does your calendar look like for the year?
Yeah. Yeah. So trying to I mean, I just described that in what, probably 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but trying to compress that into a deck to show to sponsors or just to like have a conversation over FaceTime about it or Zoom with a sponsor was tricky. And I think for the most part, the sponsors that I got involved in this just like really took a leap of faith based on me appearing excited about this idea and the fact that I've put out 200 plus videos on YouTube. And they're like, well, uh, at the very least, like you, every single time you put out a video, you get like 30,000 views, and it's just a very long vlog. And somebody, like, there's going to be people that'll watch it. I don't think any of them, and I don't think anybody who watched the film was like really prepared for where we went with it and like the level of quality that Nick and I were able to get above my normal vlog video content on YouTube, which is it's just me trying to shoot Paula, my partner, and our life in real time. Like I'm very intentional about I don't want to slow her down. I don't want to, take a whole bunch of extra time and there's no redos. It's just what we can get as we're training. And this was like we are going to this place for a week to do this thing and get the best shots that we can and like be put out the highest quality piece that we can. And I don't think, yeah, as much as I might have tried to like describe that ahead of time, it's hard to imagine unless you have it in your own head.
I was thinking about your vision and your goal, and even how you were talking about like, can you train your body to do this thing? And it feels like it's really similar to the concept, the Japanese concept of a misogi, right? Where you do one really hard thing a year, and a lot of times, for some people that's running a marathon. I think the entire film in a very meta way was like your misogi of like, this is the hardest thing I'm going to do all year. It's going to take all year to put this thing together. But each one of those places that you went, you kind of challenge yourself in different ways. I'd be curious also, like, what the hardest part about each one of those things, because if you look at the swimming segment, for example, like that looked like a pretty gnarly swim, but also worrying about getting all the right drone shots, worrying about getting all the action, all the speaking, putting together this whole scene basically must have been equally difficult to do.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say that just to like yeah, to address the logistics and the production directing standpoint, component of it first, that was I would say the hardest part of this film for sure. Is I feel like really confident that Nick and I working together can come up with some incredibly beautiful shots. Um, and I was much more concerned about how do we make this mean something, because
mm,
this means something to me, but it's a very abstract idea even to me. As I'm like packing up to fly to Victoria, BC, and then drive the entire length of Vancouver Island and fly on this uh, old airplane that lands on its belly. And Paul is like, "What is this movie about again?" Because this was like the first scene, and I it's like, uh, I can't tell it to you in like 10 seconds. I've told you before, and each time I tell you, I'm like sort of synthesizing the current version that I see of it in my head. So it was very much like I have this general idea and this question that's in mind, but also I hope that this reveals itself as we're doing this, and to have that sort of burden in mind at the same time we're looking around and trying to decide the best way to shoot this little island or which drone to use. And it was that I would spend a lot of time in these locations just in full mental gridlock over I'm acting and also directing a bit, and Nick and I are having conversation back and forth, and also trying to decide how do I make this mean something to people.
and you're breaking ground for an athlete telling a story that's not just a daily, piece of content or a vlog or a race recap or anything like that. I mean, you're breaking new ground in such a meaningful way of like, I have an idea of what I want to try to show. I think that this is a new way that athletes could approach storytelling, could approach bringing value to their partners, approach introducing new ideas into the sports themselves. There's no doubt in my mind that multiple athletes are going to try to basically rip this off. And I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad about it because I'd love to see this kind of content pop up. I'd love to see lots of people try to like tell their story, because I feel like if you watch this movie through, and if you've spent any time like I have with you, like this is exactly who you are. Of hey, I want to do more than just be racing between the tape. I want people to love this sport as much as I love it, and I want people to understand that there's more to it than just racing and training all the time. Like there's beautiful world out there that you can experience on two wheels or 2 feet, or swimming through the water. Like there's so much more to it that could be appreciated that's getting completely ignored by so many people. And that really resonated with me, like having spent so much time with you and then also seeing this. And there are truths that other athletes have that need to come out, and people need to see that and appreciate it. So I welcome anybody who's trying to to rip you off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's like a rising tide carries all ships, that sort of a thing. I started on YouTube, and then it wasn't really until around COVID and Lionel Sanders getting into YouTube that people started to get YouTube. And up until that point, like I was just like a kid with a YouTube channel, and people watched some of my race recap videos because I had put like back in 2013 GoPros on the front and the back of my bike and was breaking down race tactics inside of draft legal triathlon racing. But then, yeah, I started feeling very pulled around the time that I was sponsored by Red Bull, and you and I were having conversations to make this more spiritual type content around the passion and the journey and the process of bettering oneself, for multi-sport or for any sport in general. Really, is I am very excited that this film, we have gotten a lot of feedback from people saying, I don't swim, bike, or run. I just like work at a car company, but this has me questioning my entire life. And should I work less and go do things more and spend more time with my family or get in shape? And like that's kind of what I was hoping, a big part of what I was hoping for with this. And what I tried to make it as little about myself as possible and more about this idea that I just needed to be the one to convey, because I wanted people in any walk of life to be able to have that sort of realization or thought of, wow, I'm unhappy, or I just, feel okay, I'm fine, but there could be a lot more to life that you're missing if you just start to think about things in slightly different ways. And I guess that sort of brings me to the idea, like the name of the film, Look for Things Where You Can Find Them. That's actually something that Nick's mother, who is like a world famous Italian artist, said. And the way that I can relate it to my journey is that I've been trying to pick out the most adventurous races that I can, and every chance that I can, I do a bike workout in a slightly different place, and it's been like scratching the itch just a little bit through life. But ultimately, if I wanted to find exactly like the version of multi-sport that I've envisioned or that I fantasize about, like I'm not going to find it by just riding from the house again, and I'm not going to find it by going to the same races again. I'm going to find it in interesting places that I've fantasized about in my mind. So you got to look for things in the places that you can actually find them.
That's amazing. I have this theory. I want to test it with you because I think this actually ties in really well. Um, there was a huge explosion in ultra running many years ago, and that explosion was related to two, I think, major pieces of content. And actually, maybe putting it two isn't. There were probably a lot of pieces of content that came out around that same time. Um, you know, and one of them was a book, which now I'm completely blanking on. It's about a guy in Mexico who like runs with all these tribes down there and runs super far. Gosh, I can't
Is
think
that
of it.
Born to Run?
That's the one. That book came out, and then there was a film on YouTube that Ethan Newberry, the Ginger Runner, posted with Gary Robbins, where he runs around the um, uh, Wonderland Trail, I think it is. And the way that they film that FKT attempt, which he eventually, I think, gets, he's really approachable. He's really open about what he's doing at each one of the. He's like narrating what he's eating, why he's eating, what he's putting on, what he's doing, how he's thinking about stuff in every aid station. Even though he's like in the middle of an FKT attempt, he's basically narrating his own experience. And around that same time, there were plenty of other, movies that came out, or long form videos that came out. But it, I think, brought a lot of people into the sport, myself included. That was the video where I could see myself as an ultra runner. And that was the one where I was like, I think I want to try this. And I think up until that point, ultra running seemed just like this crazy, like you're going to run how far? Like, how are you going to do that? And when you see someone break it down the way that Gary broke it down, or you see how the guy in Born to Run breaks down how they got to where they are, it feels so much more possible. You understand sort of the equation of what it takes to do that kind of thing. You understand the feeling of what it must feel like to run 50 miles or 100 miles. And I think that a lot of people finally got over the hump of being like, I can do this, because they saw themselves in it. They saw how possible it was to do these things. In the same way, I feel like in triathlon there have not been really many pieces of content. It's all race content, and it's like, yeah, but how you get to the race? Like, you know, whereas is this one, it's like, hey, do you like swimming, biking, or running? Here's what that might look like, and here's a beautiful way of experiencing it. And you don't even have to race. You could just run up this huge mountain, or you could swim across this lake. And I just feel like this film and others that will likely follow is probably going to be the thing that gets people kind of off the couch and into the sport. Maybe.
Maybe. We'll see. That's certainly a personal goal of mine. I remember like 5 years ago or something, somebody asked me how I want to be remembered in the sport. And to me, it would be to be thought of as a person who got more new people into it than anyone else. And I've always admired free skiers and free surfers and mountain bikers who are just project based athletes, and they put out films, and that gets me excited. That's what I watch when I'm low on motivation and need to do a ride or a run or anything, as I go put on one of these more artistic, hypey videos where people are just having an incredible amount of fun, and they're not encumbered by or talking about how does this performance impact my life and my next race. It's just, holy shit, I love this. This is so fun. The energy is palpable. So
Yeah.
that's, like I said, that's kind of stuff that I like and that I want to see out there in the world.
Admirable in so many ways. And I think, that's got to be a lot of the conversations that you're having with people that come up to you at these races, or you come across with. I mean, the community that you guys have built with TTL is really strong and deep. I mean, how is that? I mean, when you're posting out this film, I mean, let's talk about the launch, the premiere of this film. I've got to imagine all however many hundred people in that room were just there no matter what. You could have put like anything on that screen.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so we did a screening of the film in Oceanside, California, 2 days before Oceanside 70.3, which is kind of like opening day of triathlon in North America. We were gonna initially put this out in the fall/winter of 2024, but I felt like this was just a much more appropriate time. Ski films come out just as ski season's starting, and you're getting all hyped and you're buying new gear, and this felt like it was worth putting off until spring. But yeah, you're right. Like, we pre-sold tickets, we sold out a 200-person theater, and every single one of those people, we could have put some real subpar stuff up on the screen, and I think they would have all appreciated it and been fine with it. But everybody was pretty. I don't think anybody was really expecting what we put out. Like I said, I think they were expecting like maybe a vlog or a little bit nicer. I've done some pretty artistic YouTube videos before that generally flop because there's not enough information in them. But this was a cut above, and it was very cool to show it to people that were almost guaranteed to be frothed up over it. But the really helpful thing I think that came out of that was there were quite a few like media professionals in the audience there. The entire Ironman broadcast and media creation crew took the evening off to come watch, as well as just some other, people in that genre, and their reactions walking out of the theater were incredibly valuable to us. um, and the feedback that they gave, and then the other like type of feedback that it was most memorable to me is a guy that walked out. He does no triathlon. He just got into trail running, but he's like was a semi-pro skater, and another guy who was like an ex-pro surfer. He was like 63 years old, and both of them were just super into it and loved it, and it connected with them. And like that's the kind of person that I'm really excited to see, react to it and react to TTL in general. And it makes me feel like we're on the right track of like putting out something that speaks to people's desire to just like be in the sport. And because those sports get it. You're in that, like you're making up your own idea of what is good in surfing and skating, and you're like chasing this feeling of nailing a kickflip, and it just felt right and it looked good, versus what somebody else told you is important.
Yeah. Uh, Here's a question on, a lot of times people, when they get a podium or they have a big result, which I would say this probably, I'd file that under the same thing, right? You worked super hard for this moment. You do a premiere, you put out this insane video, then you repost or you post it up on YouTube, it gets a huge response. Like everything about this film has been incredibly well received, which is why we're doing a podcast about it. But also, like, it took you a lot of time to make this. It took you a lot of effort to build, the partners, the deck for the thing, the production plan, the actual film itself, every element that went into this took a lot of effort. You can't just turn around and look for things where you can find them too. Um, and so a lot of times when people have this big result, they immediately, well, they have either like a rough moment or they start chasing the next podium like right away. How are you handling that side of things? Because again, like this is like years of work and intention into like this big, big moment. How do you feel?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. A big emotional letdown immediately after, which was a little bit tempered by needing to put up 2 Ironman YouTube videos in the week and a half after the film, because 2 days after we screened the film in Oceanside, my wife Paula won 70.3 Oceanside, and I had already signed like a partnership deal with Ironman to put out a couple of videos around Oceanside. It's actually like a 6-part video series going on, cataloging her entire series of racing this year. And I needed to get like the one that was about leading into Oceanside and the one about Oceanside up like within the next 10 days after the film went up. So I like the least I've slept ever in my life, the least I've trained, and I just was burning the wick at both ends. I got sick. So on the one hand, like very brutal, but that's sort of just like immediately being thrust into something that I needed to get done, even if it wasn't this like insane spiritual, huge thing. I think helped that process slightly, or just maybe even just prolonged it a little bit, because I still feel it, but I have so much going on with TTL, the business, with this series around Paula, with just thinking about brand moves and stuff, that I can't ever just like spiral too hard. I need to at a certain point like open the laptop and start doing something productive, and like kind of turn that crazy whatever galaxy brain just like spiral into thoughts forever off to a degree. But yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say there haven't already been like kind of spinning up new ideas and everything, but I'm not forcing it because I
Yeah.
have other things to work on in the meantime. And if I didn't, I do think that feeling of panic would be much more intense, of how am I ever going to make the second one of this, or what is the second one, and how could it ever live up to this? I have this after every piece of content that I put out that I feel really strongly about. Like, what am I going to do this week that it means anything relative
Right.
to this video about winning this big race?
I'm sure it didn't help that I called you immediately afterwards and was like, I have a bunch of ideas. What if you did this and this and this and this and this?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sure
you're
everybody
not the only
does.
one. Yeah, definitely not the only one. And that's really exciting because I was hoping that this, would obviously be successful, but could sort of serve as like a manifesto for people and certainly for me of like this was a question, and now boom, I think the question has been received very well and people are like, "Yes, I do think that's a thing." And now is the next video just like full gas, full throttle on funness, or do we do something that's a little more FKT style? Do what is it? But this certainly didn't like pigeonhole in any way. If anything else, it was just like breaking the mold apart, and now the possibilities are endless. We've got three sports to work with.
Yeah, a
You
lot
could
of
do
surface
anything.
area. You could do anything. And that's sort of what I was talking about. Like, just, you're setting the bar so much higher in terms of like, you guys don't have to do race recaps and day in the life anymore. You can do these big epic locations, these projects. And I think you've given permission to a whole generation of athletes to kind of follow in the footsteps. I would love to go into more of the tactical stuff just for maybe not triathletes, but other people in other sports that would be considering trying to take on something like this on their own. What were some of the early steps that you did to kind of build the structure to be able to even do something? So obviously, like, we know you had a YouTube channel, you had been making content already, so like there were some chops in place, and the sponsors understood that, like, hey, worst case scenario, we're gonna get like a really great YouTube video out of this thing. Best case scenario, we get a film that absolutely reshapes the entire sport of triathlon. Um, but starting there with this, like, okay, I know how to make videos, but I want to make a really, really amazing film. What were those early steps that you did to kind of get everybody on board?
Um, yeah, I got a lot of help from a guy named Dennis Kim. He's been involved in cycling and triathlon for quite a while. He really helped me from like as a person who's worked for brands, and he worked for Cannondale for a long time. He rebranded the is it the Canucks? Um, one I can't remember if it was the Canucks, but I think it is. Major hockey team, and him basically giving me input of like if I was a brand, here are the things that I would want to see, because I am just like I know what I want to see, and I think I know what might be valuable to a brand that I would pitch this to, and we kind of worked together on putting together a deck. So I had like I knew that there needed to be like a swim scene, a bike scene, and a run scene. Um, and then my initial thoughts were be like we're gonna figure out kind of what this is about as we go, but it's gonna be like a ski film, and we're gonna go find ourselves. And to sort of bridge the gap in like, wow, this is out of the left field and this could flop completely and nobody gets it. We built in a lot of like guaranteed, Instagram collaborations, um, and things that would make it more appealing to the brands. So, like inside of the deck, it had pretty pictures and explaining what each scene was about and what athlete that I wanted to have involved and kind of what the message in each scene should be spiritually. But then, scroll down a bit and like for X amount of dollars, you're getting to have pre-roll in the film. You're getting to that we're going to put up behind the scenes as we're shooting this, and we'll include you as much as possible in that. And then we're going to give you 3 different reel cut downs from the scene that you're involved in. Like I went after a swim sponsor, a bike sponsor, and we didn't really get anybody to sponsor the run scene, but it was okay because we had enough bike related sponsors. And then we'll also be doing behind each scene a gear video. So like here's the gear that I used and why I used it to swim in this freezing cold water, and here's the gear that I used on the gravel bike to be riding around in the desert. And that was kind of like the kicker piece where if these marketing teams were a little bit on the line, like, oh, sweet, gear video. Awesome. Are you going to have like a reel that involves that gear video? Yes. Oh, okay. Easy. Here's money.
So you de-risked the entire film project by essentially offering up deliverables in short form and long form level, where they knew that even if the film didn't do anything, they were still going to get something that would be comparable. You basically gave them a smoking deal.
Exactly. Like if you were to look at the package that we put together and the number of collaborative reels and photo assets and everything that would just go up on Instagram, in my opinion, that was worth the amount of money we were asking to buy into the film in general. And like you could just think of the film as great. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, whatever. That's like doesn't really matter because we got enough just engagement in a really natural way around somebody doing something interesting that isn't just, look, I have a new wetsuit. Look, I new bike.
So now that the film actually did meet and exceed everybody's expectations, what do those conversations look like? I mean, are those partners coming back being like, "Hey, buddy, when's the next one?"
I mean, like for sure, just the initial reactions were like, "What? What is that? Holy shit!" Like that's not what we were expecting. This is absolutely amazing. Like when are we getting those gear videos? Like this is mind blowing, and I think we succeeded in blowing the expectation out of the water, and then some messaging from brands like, we're so proud to be like have our name associated with something that is so pure like this. And in my mind, the next time that I approach any one of our sponsors, or just a sponsor that I don't currently have, it's nice to work with the sponsors that I already have, because yes, that makes those conversations easy. But hopefully with this film, it makes future conversations also easy. But I think it's accomplished, what we had hoped, where it's like a great proof of concept, where now hopefully people aren't just taking a leap of faith anymore, and we can do some more fun stuff.
I mean, the channel, your YouTube channel on its own, is a pretty strong proof of concept and like demonstration of the audience size and the interest and the engagement. I mean, you guys with TTL, you've got a lot of stuff on the go. I mean, you've got your regular content, you've got both your short form content channels, you've got the app. We haven't even talked about that.
Yeah.
You've got a newsletter, you've got a podcast. I mean, what you offer partners, the surface area that they could build off of, and I mean, all of that is where you can de-risk their investment too. Just exactly that. Oh, we'll make a gear video. We'll make sure we talk about it on the podcast. We'll make sure it shows up in the newsletter. We'll put it on the YouTube channel. Like, you have so much surface to really just boost the value of those discussions. It's funny to me to think to the other athletes out there that are just competing and trying to get on a podium, competing with you guys that have so much to offer any partner, and so much depth to offer them as well. With each one of those platforms, take any individual platform, there's something to offer. And I feel like that is probably what opened the biggest doors for you and will continue to open doors for you with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I've never really been super good at itemizing things. Like when we have a sponsorship discussion, or like necessarily around this film, that was a stretch for me, and that Dennis helped out a lot with, of one reel, one cut down, 10 photos. And like, what is, typically the way that we've operated and we've kept sponsors for so long is like, we kind of go, you know what, we love this company and this is the amount of money that we need to pay the bills, and look at this insane ecosystem that we have. There's no way that you can say that the amount of money that we're asking for is unreasonable.
Right.
But I also like, we haven't had much luck. We're operating sponsorship conversations where it's more itemized, and you will get mentioned once a month on the podcast, and you will get 2 Instagram posts a month, and you will get the partners that we've sort of gone down that pathway with, or that insisted on that, I would say have been less enjoyable. And it's like, that's a new litmus test for me moving forward, is if they're very hung up on that, then we might not be the right partner for them. Because this film was like a great example of, I think, our entire thing in general, where if you just kind of want to be involved and you have a great product and we like it and we like you and you like us, like, we want to talk about it. Like, we're in a very fortunate position, Paul and I, to we work with the brands that we want to work with, that has the gear that we want to work with, that we believe in, because we've built this platform, and we're not having to work with something that we don't because of a financial situation. And generally, like, the brands that we work with trust us that if we just send you bike computers or we send you wheels, like, we know that we both entered into this because we like each other and we like each other's stuff, and you're going to talk about it because you're excited. And I'm just like a pretty gear centric person generally. I love stuff that works and has a function and is, the best of its kind. And I'm not going to tell you about that because I feel like I have to. I'm going to tell you about it because I'm excited about it, and it's cool stuff, and I think it's going to enhance your life or your experience in the sport. Like, that's, I don't know, the TTL ethos in a nutshell.
That comes across so authentically and all this stuff. I mean, I'm actually looking at my desk. I've got a DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and I bought that immediately after you and I hung out last summer. And you're like, I don't even need my DSLR anymore. I just use this thing. And I was like, oh, that's enough for me. And I went home and bought it.
Not sponsored by DJI. Would love to be, but I mean, this is how like most of our sponsorship things have started. I found a thing and I just started using it and I really liked it, and eventually reached out to the company and said, "Hey, just so you know, I'm really into this. I'm probably going to keep buying it myself, but if you want to work together in some way, I'd love to tell people about it in an official capacity. Give me a little give me a little bit of help here so that I don't go broke and I can keep telling people about things, and doing what I love for as long as possible."
I mean, that's the brilliance of the brands that do work with you is the fact that you're already on board and you want to tell these stories, and all they have to do is really empower you by sending you the product and giving you sort of that inside track on what's coming. I mean, what better way to do it as opposed to like, well, we've got a new product releasing, we better find some people that can talk about it. Like, well, I'd much rather work with somebody who was already on board, who already was capable of making high level content, and then give them the product and just let them run with it. Like, that's the best case scenario, right?
Yeah, totally.
Doubly so if they like work with you on developing said product. But
I mean, that's the ultimate dream, right? That's the
yeah,
goal, is to be, I mean, like, from a storytelling perspective and from a gearhead perspective and from just performance perspective, everything, like, being able to be involved in like why the stitch on this thing went here and why this was like this and we need this extra pocket over here, like, to be able to storytell that and bring that thing to market and show yourself using it in the way that it was intended to be used. Like, holy shit, that is like, that's where I want TTL to be headed, and where like my brain goes to for the future is, okay, I don't even think we necessarily need to make our own products, but like doing collaborative products with brands that are like really deep into the R&D and know what they're doing, and like, hey, just like help me help you develop this, and then give it to me and I will go shout from the freaking mountaintops why it's awesome and how it got me to the top of this mountaintop, and then start over and do it again. Like, oh, to have a life doing that would be dream come true.
I feel like it's probably not too far off given the fact that you've got all this stuff sort of built up to this point. And that's the thing, like, you've just demonstrated that you can make this stuff and you can make it valuable to brands and you can help them create, meaningful outcomes when it comes to launching those products.
Yeah, I
It
hope
just
so. That's what I feel. You know, there's it. You don't know till somebody calls up, but we've got a couple of things in the works that I think are headed in that direction that are really exciting.
One of the things I wanted to sort of switch tack for a minute, but one of the things that's also new this year is you jumped into a trail race and absolutely smashed it. More,
Yep.
and you are kind of developing yourself outside of just the triathlon scene. In fact, even TTL, the name is now changed to TTL Multisport. I'd love to hear you
Very
talk about
softly rolling
yeah.
that out.
I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about sort of the new things that you're taking on and how you're thinking about kind of your position in the world and how all this kind of manifests.
Yeah, I have started thinking of myself as a professional endurance athlete, or a, you could say, a professional multi-sport athlete. I'm very finicky with words and positioning and stuff, and I spend hours and hours on long bike rides and runs thinking about how does TTL multi-sport feel? How, like, can we just go TTL all by itself? How can we communicate that this is not just about triathlon, that this is, about a lifestyle, and just three sports are involved, but it could be, there could be other sports involved too. Like I've surfed a couple times now and I'm getting into that, and we ski in the wintertime. So I think that the move into experimenting with ultra running for me is not so much of like I'm an ultra runner now. It's I feel like I owe it to myself to experience as many things as possible, and ultra running is one sort of a way that I can go and test myself on courses that other people have put their heart and soul into. And the culture there is really cool. The community is incredible. But also you could say the same thing for swim run, for Otelo. You could say the same thing for extreme triathlon like Norseman and Keltman, these iron distance triathlons in terrible conditions and finishing with trail runs. Like, I'm not saying that I'm done with triathlon by any sense, but I'm saying like I'm not passing up on these other interesting endurance opportunities to make sure that I can get one spot higher on, in the 70.3 half Ironman rankings at the end of the year. And fortunately, like pretty much all my sponsors are on board with that. You know, whether they've explicitly said it or supported this film that we made that was very much not about racing. I think I've proven that as long as you could think of this if you're thinking about doing something like this yourself, I think the secret sauce is if you are excited about a thing and it's a challenge to you and you're not sure how to tackle it, but you are fired up and excited to do it. Like, that's a compelling story that brands, that people can rally behind. And the worst thing you can be in its position is like, it's obvious that you don't care about something, but you're having to do it.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that. That's great advice.
And so, I don't know. Like I said, like, I don't want this film, or I don't want what I'm doing right now to be a like, you shouldn't race. It's just, is that what you want to do? If it is, then awesome. And if that's what fires you up, awesome. But also, if what fires you up is just seeing how far you could ride your bike tomorrow, or seeing if you can cross that mountain range by foot, then be like, don't not do that because you feel like you have to stay committed to this thing that other people recognize is like an obvious pursuit.
I think that's something that's really defined you, is that you're willing to sort of zig when others are zagging. You went in that direction. I mean, the Solstice Sessions was an early project that you and I got to do that was just like, I want to be a project athlete. I want to make something that's sort of interesting and tells a different story about what we can do, in this world. And yes, I'm going to utilize the sports that I'm elite at, but I just want to show a different approach. And I think Solstice Sessions was maybe like your first, attempt at putting that together. And there was a story and there were stakes. I think the best part about all sports content is that there's always some level of stakes. Can I do this? Will I be able to accomplish the task? What's going to happen if I try this? There's always something involved, where I think a lot of other content categories don't have the same style or don't have stakes at all. Like, well, if I fail, I guess it's just try it again. Whereas, like, I don't know, I feel like when it comes to sports, there's just a little bit more to work with for any creator, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's easy. Like, the built-in storyline is so simple. It doesn't often need to be fabricated. Just like, you want to go get a PR at this event, or you want to see if you can complete said event. Like, it's, that's probably why we're drawn to sports, is because we're drawn to stories like that, and we can imagine ourselves doing that and having a story that is developing, that is about you, that you're the hero in, is like the ultimate excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're doing now is so obvious for partners to get into, because it's like, hey, I'm going to be doing exciting things in the endurance space that aren't aren't the straightforward things that you would expect most people with my background to do, and that's what's going to make it exciting, and that's how we're going to differentiate. We're going to bring value in a completely different way, bring visibility to the brand. We're going to, talk about all the gear that we're using to accomplish these sort of unusual tasks, let's call it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Solstice Sessions was almost just too advanced.
Yeah.
Like, when we put it out, like, it was, people were completely not ready for it. Gravel hadn't exploded, trail running hadn't exploded. It was just like a different time, and certainly a different time on the internet. But these days with gravel and ultra running, um, I think people are much more in that frame of mind, and people are a little less uh, just do it. Like, that commercial that Nike put out about like winning isn't for everyone. Like that was just like the way, like 10 years ago or whatever. It wasn't shocking to see that at all. I just feel like that was kind of the way. And to say like, oh, hey, I kind of want to go on this walkabout to like find myself. You're like, well, cool. Like, I don't want a job either. Like, must be fun to be unemployed and living off your parents or whatever. Uh, Versus nowadays, I just think it's just like maybe a little bit more accepted or of interest.
Yeah, aspirational, I think is the word I'd be putting out there.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I think the future looks good for it, but
Yeah, I'm
time will tell.
excited. I mean, the follow up, the follow through, all the different things that you could do, even with the existing film. I mean, partners looking to activate. This is the perfect thing to show at races. This is the perfect thing to get people hyped up at any point during the season. It's a perfect thing for communities to gather around and just like cheer on their sport. And it's not about like, well, I already know how it ends. Like you can only watch the live stream of a race really one time, but this is something you could sit down and watch before every training session and get hyped. This is something that you could watch in the off season when you're just like jonesing so hard to get back at it. There's so many opportunities for people to watch this film, and I love that this exists.
Yeah, I mean that was the hope. I come back to the same three ski films every time I ride the trainer for 3 or 4 hours, because they just like put me in a good mood no matter what. The soundtrack is incredible, and we've gotten that feedback from people already. Like a lot of comments, like, "This is my fourth time watching it. It just makes me ready for the week or whatever." And those, like it is performing decently well in terms of numbers for a video on our channel, but the number of comments and direct messages and emails and like the length of each of those comments is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Just paragraphs from people, saying how, it meant so much to them and they feel seen and they can't thank us enough. And that kind of thing, I think, just goes so much further than seeing a million views or
Yeah.
or whatever, to feel like that's why I do it. Like the numbers are like a fun thing that video game it and stuff, but like knowing that you had an impact on someone's day or life or way of thinking, positively, you know, whether they cried or anything like that, to me fires me up inside in a very special way.
Dude,
That
there's a lot
you
of there's a lot of people crying in the comments.
I honestly wasn't like really expecting that, but yeah, people got emotional, and
It,
I'm here for it. It's awesome.
yeah, it's so
It's really
fun
special.
looking through. You've definitely done something that resonated on a deeper level, and I think like that's really the message, right? Of you don't have to just do what everyone else is doing. You can do something that is really true to yourself, that's authentic, and the rest of the community will come along for the ride. It's better to be doing this than to just stick with the status quo and showing up racing. Not that there's anything wrong with racing, but gosh, you really put something out there that hit on a really deep level.
Yeah, that one of the comments, if not the comment that made the biggest impact on me, was from Mark Allen. He messaged me after seeing the trailer, and then he also messaged me after watching the entire thing. And if you don't know who Mark Allen is, 6-time Kona Ironman world champion, the GOAT of triathlon for sure. So like a huge idol of mine growing up in the sport. And he messaged me and said like about the opening line in the narration, where you say like, what if it's about going to places and meeting people and etc. And what if no one else even cares? And he was like, that is it. And he used some expletives and said, heck yeah, like amazing. This, and to have that guy like have the film resonate with him on that level, even though he obviously was more dedicated than anyone to his craft. Like that meant the world to me, and I don't think he'll. Hopefully, he doesn't mind me sharing that.
I mean, I think the praise is universal. I think he's not alone on that one. But yeah, this idea that, we do this stuff because we love it first and foremost, and you went right to the root of that and really just showed it on a different level of how you might experience this sport, and how, you can throw the rules away and just go out and be an endurance athlete and go tackle big awesome things, and you don't have to be between the race tape to enjoy this sport or sports, multi sports. um I think there's a lot of really powerful messages in here, and how cool that, like, you didn't need to be a guy at a brand putting this out there. Like, you literally had the idea and you made it happen, and you had support, no doubt, and you had the right people behind you, but like, there was no, you know yeah, it was you. Like, you actually, and shout out to Nick and everybody else, and Dennis and Paula and everybody, but like, you really like had this vision and you put it out into the world and it worked. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, I don't know if we got enough business of things in for the people who listen to the podcast, but that was the ness of it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the business of is like the partnership side of things, and I think there's a lot of like considerations for future ones, like, oh, does like go on the film festival circuit before you launch it on YouTube. I personally think putting it on here was the right move, because your community has been such a big part of TTL that it felt right to put it there and really allow them to celebrate this film with you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
I
yeah,
felt like that was the feedback that I got from most of the media related people that saw it at the screening in Oceanside was, don't put this on YouTube. That'll disallow, that'll make film festivals not want to take it, and this is film festival material. Um, and Nick and I went back and forth on it a lot, and we have had a previous film in film festivals, and that was a great experience. But I really felt like this is something we've been talking about on our podcast for a year, and something that we've been showing behind the scenes of on Instagram. And I also told our sponsors that supported this and took this flyer, that it was going to go on YouTube, and it would just be like, it would feel like incredibly selfish to me, and in a departure from the intention of the film for me to keep it from the people who I feel like need to or want to see it the most, just so that Nick and I could take it to film festivals and pat ourselves on the back that other cinematographers and artists thought it was great. And in the meantime, it wasn't meant for them.
yeah, yeah. This is a love letter to multisport, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. So cool, man. So incredible. Well, for anybody listening who has made it this far without pausing the podcast and not going and watching the film and coming back, take this as a sign to go watch. Look for things where you can find them. Honestly, Eric, I feel sort of like relieved for you, because you've been talking about this for a long time. You've been working towards this for a long time, and now it exists in the world and it absolutely slays. So
I'm relieved too. I was there was a lot of insecurity around it because it is not normal.
yeah.
And when it's as me, it was my everything that's been in my head for a long time. And if it comes out and people on YouTube are like, "This guy is a friggin' lunatic and what a loser that doesn't want to try hard, and he must suck. That's why he's making movies." It's like, that's me. And if people don't like what this film says, it's me. It's not about somebody else. And like, artisticness aside, it's I put myself out there. So anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for watching, everybody, and the feedback and everything. It means the world.
Rad. Well, we always end every episode, as you know, with a segment called BPC, a brand, product, or content that you're fired up about. You got something to throw in?
Yeah, I do. It's not like completely. It's not. I wouldn't say it's self-serving, but the guy who actually made the TTL logo, Ralph Dunning, he has a company called Foreign Rider, and watching his brand develop over the last couple years is like incredibly inspirational for me, but also just it's been wild to see how it's developed. And I think people listening to this would probably find this interesting. If you if you go look at it on Instagram or their YouTube videos, the engagement rate does not suggest that this is a major player. Um, but it is like caught fire inside of the professional sports world in just like this insane way where like number one cyclist in the world is calling up Ralph and only wants to wear his clothes and doesn't care if he's sponsored or not. Just like, I found your stuff and I just bought $2,000 of stuff in your Toronto store. Hockey players, professional football players, professional NBA players, and just like having conversation after conversation with like major sports teams saying, "Hey, we don't really, our guys don't want to wear Nike ever, like they have to in games, but all they're talking about in the locker room is your stuff. Like, can we just get 600 logoed up for the team to travel in?" And then that develops into now Foreign Rider is the official merchandise for the Utah Hockey Club, the Utah Jazz. And in the Utah Hockey Club, they sold $1 million of fan merchandise in the first month and set all these records and everything. And all of this is built on just having like an absolutely fantastic product. And the marketing is great, but I wouldn't say you'd look at it and be like, oh, there's some secret sauce in the marketing here. I actually made Nick and I made a film that was like the first film that they put onto the internet when they launched the brand. It's called Where Endurance Meets Creative, and it wouldn't suggest that like NBA players would be eating this stuff up, but that's just like a super interesting thing. I think that I remember hearing somebody say like the best marketing strategy is a good product.
Yeah.
So we're going to be like selfishly, we are going to be doing some stuff, some more collaboration products with Foreign Rider and TTL in the future. So, like keep an eye out for those. But it's just it's a badass brand led by a very cool person.
That is so rad. Wow, I had no idea that it was. I mean, I knew about the TTL logo. I knew that you guys had collab, but whoa.
You would never know, like behind the scenes, just going off.
Okay, I have one that is. It makes me think of TTL a little bit in an interesting way. I actually just found out about this from my buddy Jeremy. It's called Yowamushi Pedal, and it's an anime series about cycling. And so like it's basically like cartoons in Japan, and it's about this kid that like joins this cycling club, but like the visuals for this anime is like obviously the guy doing the artwork is a bike rider because everything from like the derailleur to the every little element is just absolutely perfect, which resonates with me. And apparently they, in the anime series they have like their kits and stuff like that. And then they released an actual real life version of the kit and just like instant sellout.
Oh wow.
Just like completely blew out this kit. I'm headed to Japan in a week and a half, and I'm gonna try to find as much Yawamushi merch as I could possibly, or literally anything I could find from this anime. I've slowly started like checking out a little bit anime. I get like inspired to edit when I watch anime. Like yeah, there's a handful like Spy X Family and Chainsaw Man, but this one is like my new watch, and I've been super into it because it's bikes and anime, and yeah, I don't know. So I'm gonna be in Japan looking for some of this stuff pretty soon, and I don't know. I just the idea that you make us really incredible content, everybody loves it, everybody gets into it, and then you release, pieces of the gear that they see in the videos, like not terribly far off from what you're doing at TTL.
Not at all. Not
So
at all. But why? But like the fact that it works blows my mind.
yeah,
Also, because like I came up with all this stuff, or this anime person came up with all this stuff, and then you think, I mean, I think it could be cool if we put out a jersey, and then they put it out and it slays.
yeah.
Like, that also easily could have been nobody really understood why. Like, but like that just speaks to the power of the brand, I
Yeah.
guess. Of like, I love this show so much. Anything that I see anywhere that has anything to do with it, I'm gonna like. I need.
I aspire to this level of hype, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just and again, same thing where anime, like how like there's another best practice for how to get people excited for a brand, right? Like who would have thought that the way to sell $1 billion of bike gear would be to make an anime show about riding bikes and then release like the custom kits that they wear in the show. Like that's another one where it's like nobody thought of that one, but somebody pulled it off.
You know what that like what occurs to me with that is that like these are brands like that have started because they wanted to put something out into the world, and that something was not a product. I feel like I've seen some people, and you can tell when a company is trying to reverse engineer something, and they're like, okay, we really want to sell surfing fins. Let's come up with a reason, like the why that we started this, and like try to come up with a backstory. And I don't know, what should our aesthetic be versus somebody like Ben Gravy, who's just been surfing ridiculous waves and on the East Coast, or like surfing behind oil tankers, and is just so excited. Like and you're putting out into the world something that's special and enhances people's lives, and then you put out a product that speaks to that. And people, I think, I assume, and certainly my take is like, oh, I'm gonna buy this thing that, like, every time I put it on, it gives me the same feeling as when I watch this content that gives me that incredible feeling. So like I can get a little bit of that every single time I get ready to go running if I buy this pair of shorts that's from this brand that does all this cool stuff, and I'm gonna think about that film that I watched. So like I don't know. Like that, at least I hope, because like
Yeah.
that's why we do apparel or any sort of merchandise. Is I think, oh man, if somebody puts on a TTL sweatshirt, they're gonna get that same warm fuzzy feeling that they get when they hang out with us on YouTube, and just more of that in the world.
Yes, more of that in the world. No truer spoken. There just needs to be more of all this epic stuff done for the right reasons to be love letters to the sports that we care so much about. Like, yeah, congrats again on the film, man. I hope everybody listening to this podcast goes and watches it because it truly is a work of art.
Thanks, man. It means a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being on.